Finding your first apartment in Canada as a new permanent resident is exciting and stressful. You're navigating a hot rental market, landlords who don't know you, and a lease written in legal language you may not be familiar with. But here's what most new PRs don't know: Canadian tenant law is one of the strongest in the world. Landlords cannot legally discriminate against you based on your immigration status, your country of origin, or your race. And there are strict rules on deposits, rent increases, and evictions that protect you from day one. In the next 8 minutes, I'm going to give you everything you need to find an apartment, sign a lease safely, and know your rights as a tenant in Canada. Let's go. Let's start with what landlords are looking for, because as a new PR without Canadian credit history, you start at a disadvantage. Landlords typically want a Canadian credit check, an employment letter, and references from previous landlords. You may have none of these yet. Here's how to compete. First, always offer to pay first and last month's rent up front. This is standard in Canada and expected regardless of who you are. Second, if you have an employment offer letter or a first pay stub, include it. Third, provide bank statements showing you have 3 to 4 months of rent and savings. Fourth, get a reference letter from your home country landlord, translated into English. Fifth, write a personal cover letter, a short professional paragraph about who you are, your employment situation, and why you'll be a reliable tenant. This is more common in Canadian rental applications than most newcomers realize, and it can make a meaningful difference. And here is the legal fact every new PR must know: it is illegal for a landlord to refuse your application because of your immigration status, your country of origin, or your race. This is protected under the Human Rights Code in every single province. Before we get into the lease itself, let's talk about what renting actually costs in Canada right now. In 2026, Toronto averages $2,350 a month for a one-bedroom. Vancouver is even higher at $2,550. Calgary is more manageable at $1,750, Ottawa at $1,950, and Montreal is the most affordable major city at $1,500 for a one-bedroom. The general budget rule is that rent should not exceed 30% of your gross monthly income. If you earn $70,000 a year, about $5,833 a month before tax, your rent ceiling is around $1,750. In Toronto or Vancouver, that means shared housing in your first year is not just smart, it's often necessary. Splitting a two-bedroom in Toronto with a roommate at around $1,550 each saves you over $800 a month compared to renting a one-bedroom alone. That $800 a month goes straight into your TFSA or emergency fund. Let's walk through the key sections of a Canadian lease so you know exactly what you're signing. The rent section specifies the amount and due date, almost always the first of the month, and e-transfer is now the most common payment method. The lease term is typically 1 year fixed, after which it automatically converts to a month-to-month tenancy. You don't need to sign a new lease. The maintenance section outlines who is responsible for what. In Canada, landlords must maintain the property in a good state of repair regardless of what your lease says. Here's a critical fact for Ontario tenants: landlords are legally required to use the standard provincial lease form. If you request it and they don't provide one within 21 days, you can legally withhold 1 month's rent. And any clause in any lease that tries to waive your rights under the Residential Tenancies Act is automatically void, even if you signed it. This is the section that will save many of you from losing money. Deposit rules vary dramatically by province. In Ontario, the province with the most renters, security deposits and damage deposits are completely illegal. A landlord in Ontario can only collect your first month's rent, your last month's rent, and a refundable key deposit. That's it. If any Ontario landlord asks for a damage deposit or any additional upfront money beyond first and last, it is against the law. You do not have to pay it, and if you do, you can apply to the Landlord and Tenant Board to get it back. In BC, a security deposit up to half a month's rent is legal. In Alberta, up to 1 full month's rent. In Quebec, no deposit of any kind is permitted. If you're in BC and your landlord doesn't return your deposit within 15 days of your tenancy ending, you are legally entitled to double your deposit back. Rent increases are one of the most misunderstood areas of Canadian tenant law. In Ontario, the rent increase guideline is 2.1% for 2026. This means a landlord can raise your rent by a maximum of 2.1% once every 12 months, and must give you 90 days written notice before the increase takes effect. In BC, the guideline is 3.0%, with 3 months' notice required. Now, here is the Ontario exception that catches many tenants off guard. If your unit was first occupied for residential purposes after November 15, 2018, it is exempt from Ontario's rent control guideline. Your landlord can raise your rent by any amount with proper notice. If your building was built before 2018, you have rent control protection. If it was built after, you don't. If a landlord tries to raise your rent above the guideline on a rent-controlled unit, you can file a challenge with the Landlord and Tenant Board for free. Your landlord cannot enter your apartment without giving you at least 24 hours written notice, and entry must happen between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. The only exception is a genuine emergency. Your landlord cannot change your locks without your consent, and cannot cut off your heat, electricity, or water under any circumstances. Doing so is illegal in every province. If your landlord enters without notice, harasses you, or shuts off your utilities, file a complaint with the Landlord and Tenant Board. This is completely free and the board can award you rent abatements, money back, and impose fines on the landlord. No landlord in Canada can legally evict you overnight or without a formal process. To evict a tenant in Canada, a landlord must have a valid legal reason, consistent non-payment of rent, serious damage to the property, or the landlord or their immediate family needing to move in. Even then, they must serve you with the correct written notice form. You have the right to dispute it at the Landlord and Tenant Board, and if you dispute it, nothing happens until after a formal hearing. In Ontario, this process takes months minimum. It is illegal for any landlord to evict you because you complained about maintenance issues, or because of your race, religion, or immigration status. The most reliable platforms in Canada in 2026 are Rentals.ca, Realtor.ca, PadMapper, and Liv.rent. Facebook Marketplace and Kijiji have large volumes but also more scams. Never send money before you have a signed lease and have physically viewed the unit. Common scams include listings priced well below market rate, landlords who claim to be overseas and can't show the unit, and requests for an e-transfer deposit before any lease is signed. If it feels too good to be true, it is. Here is your complete renting action plan. Set your budget at no more than 30% of gross monthly income. Consider shared housing in year 1. Saves $600 to $900 a month. Prepare your application package, PR card, employment letter, bank statements, reference letter, cover letter. Search on Rentals.ca, Realtor.ca, PadMapper, Liv.rent. Never sign same day you view. Take 24 hours. Know your province's deposit rules before paying anything. Get tenant insurance immediately, $20 to $30 a month. Photograph every room on move-in day and email photos to your landlord with a timestamp. Here's the summary. Landlords cannot discriminate based on immigration status. In Ontario, damage deposits are illegal. Rent can only increase once every 12 months. Your landlord needs 24 hours written notice to enter. No landlord can evict you overnight. Canada's tenant protections are strong. Know them. Use them. If this gave you confidence going into your first Canadian rental, hit like and subscribe to PR Wealth Lab. Comment below. Which city are you renting in, and what was your biggest challenge finding your first apartment?